Chapter 2. Why did the slave dealer run away? The boys set out at once to take Udo back to Callan's. The slave followed close behind them, to all appearances resigned to his fate. He kept his head down as though he wanted to avoid being recognized. It still was early. The edge of the sun was just coming up behind the branches of the pine trees lining the Esquiline Hill. On Broad Street, where Xanthos had his school, only a few passers-by were to be seen. Here and there street cleaners with broom and wheelbarrow were sweeping pavements. 4 slaves trotted past the boys, bearing an elegant sedan chair with curtains closed over the windows. A couple of carts that had been delayed on their rounds pressed desperately toward the Tiber Bridge to get out of the city in time. By order of the emperor, no wheeled traffic was permitted in Rome during the day. Even people on horseback had to have special passes to ride through the narrow, crowded streets of the inner city. By taking a shortcut, the boys avoided crossing the Forum Romanum and marched instead behind the Capitoline Hill, past the Flaminius Circus and the Marcellus Theater. A few minutes later, they arrived at the Forum Boarium along the harbor. In front of Callan's cottage, they pulled up short. The door was barricaded, and the windows were boarded up. Mucius pounded violently on the door several times, but there was no answer. "Why hasn't that lazy lout opened up yet?" he yelled. "He made so much money off us that he's probably sitting around in a sailor's pub," Publius said. "I'm not leaving until I have all our money back," declared Julius. He was thrifty. That's why his friends had made him their treasurer. "Something's wrong here," Flavius said. "Otherwise, why would the windows be boarded up?" Rufus said, "Callan will come all right. Surely he can't let his slaves starve to death." "That's what you think," said Antonius. "I wouldn't put anything past that rascal. He'd let his slaves starve to death with the greatest pleasure." Always practical, Publius thought otherwise. If he lets them starve to death, he won't be able to sell them. "That's right," Antonius said, looking a bit chastened. "What do we do now?" asked Flavius. "We keep on waiting," Mucius said. He sat down on a low wall at the riverbank, and the others followed his example. Meanwhile, Rome had awakened, and work was starting throughout the city. Along the shore, carpenters' hammers' blows resounded from the shipyards. A galley from the fleet of Roman warships glided past, heading downriver. The long paddles slapped the water to the rhythm of muffled strokes from the slave driver's gong. Near the dock, behind Callan's cottage, an Egyptian bark rocked gently up and down. Dozens of half-naked slaves hauled sacks of grain on their bowed backs, trudging to the warehouses. Even the covered markets nearby were already open, shouting, and the roar of laughter carried over from them to the boys. A strong smell of fish, cheese, exotic spices, and frying sausages seasoned the air. A couple of stray dogs were nosing around in the garbage for scraps of meat and vegetables, and they snarled ravenously at each other with bared fangs. The boys looked at them fearfully. There were whole packs of wild dogs in Rome. Sometimes even wolves stole in, too, and made the streets unsafe. "Why don't we come back tonight?" Flavius asked. The wild-looking slaves, breathing heavily as they tramped by, made him uneasy. Nobody answered him. "This Callan business is getting just plain stupid," Caius said. He grabbed a rock and flung it against the door. Suddenly the door opened a crack, and an old white-haired slave peered out. The boys stormed over to him. "Hey, open up," Mucius said. "We have to talk to Callan right away." "What do you want?" "We were here yesterday," Mucius replied. "We're bringing back the slave we bought." "Oh, so it's you." The old man pushed the door open and hobbled out on crutches. "Callan isn't here. No one is here." "Why isn't Callan here?" Mucius asked. "When is he coming back?" "He isn't coming back. He's fled." "Fled?" the boys cried. "Yesterday afternoon he sold all of his slaves in a hurry to another dealer. Then he packed up a few of his things and marched off. Where? He didn't say. I'm the only one left behind. No one would have me." He grinned with his toothless mouth. "Callan made off with our money," Julius cried. "By Pluto and all the spirits of the underworld, why did Callan flee?" Mucius asked. "There was a man here," the old man explained, looking anxiously around as if the 3 goddesses of revenge, Magira, Alecto, and Tisiphone, were waiting for the chance to pounce down on him. "The man wanted Callan to give him Udo, the slave. Him there!" He pointed one of his crutches at Udo, who stood mutely behind the boys. "So we snatched Udo away from him in the nick of time," Antonius crowed. "Don't celebrate too soon, young fellows," the old slave said. "The man swore he will not rest until he has Udo dead or alive." "He must be crazy," Flavius said, but he was disturbed. "That man doesn't scare us," Caius said. "Don't say that, my son. You don't know him. By Hades, he's a frightening sight. He has only one eye." "Is he a cyclops?" Antonius cried. I think he's a former gladiator, the old man said. He wears a wooden sword, the sign that he was released from the arena. Mucius asked, what does this fellow want from Udo anyway? I don't know, but he asked about you, too, what your names were and where you live. Involuntarily, the boys turned and looked around uneasily. The old slave went on. Callan told him he didn't know who you were or where you lived. He never cared about who his clients were or where they came from. At that, the man pulled out a knife and held it against Callan's throat. I'm coming back tomorrow, he said, and if Udo isn't here then, I'll kill you and all your slaves too. Good Hercules, Flavius muttered, turning pale. You'd better go away, the old man warned the boys. The man could be here any minute. He hobbled back into the cottage. Before he disappeared into the darkness, he turned again and cried thickly, take the young slave there and drown him in the Tiber, so you'll be rid of him forever. He slammed the door and blocked it up again.